Hey everybody, in this video I'll be reviewing the Arcane Locations supplement for the game of Frostgrave, written by Joseph A. McCullough and published by Osprey Games. Hey everybody, I'm Alan, with Bricks and Blocks Gaming, tabletop gaming with bricks and blocks and building your gameplay foundation. If you're looking for a few unique Frostgrave scenarios, or would like to add a few extra base resources to your wizard's hideout, the Arcane Locations supplement might be right for you. In this video, I'm going to discuss the background and story for the supplement, discuss each of the scenarios included, going over terrain and minis that are needed, the special rules, changes with the second edition, and my personal opinion about each of the scenarios. I'll discuss the additional content included, and give my overall opinion about the supplement as a whole. So now let's get to the bricks and blocks of the Arcane Locations supplement for Frostgrave. The supplement contains 3 unconnected scenarios and a few other things to add to your Frostgrave experience. It was originally released in 2016, and in 2017 it was compiled with a few other small supplements into the Frostgrave Folio. The author decided to take full advantage of the magical city of Felstad to create some scenarios with some very unusual setups and rules, and the new base resources were apparently added as an excuse to pick up some new dungeon furniture to decorate his wizard's base. The first scenario is the Walenton Manor, and takes place in a giant ruined house that was built with moving staircases to confuse the ghosts that were thought to be haunting the dwelling. The setup for this scenario calls for 2 tables, each representing one of the 2 floors of the building. If you don't have 2 tables, just splitting a larger table in half to represent the 2 floors, like I did in my playthrough, can work, though this will likely shrink the overall recommended surface area of 2 3-foot by 3-foot tables. A staircase is placed in the center of the lower floor, then each player adds another staircase. Then, corresponding trapdoors are placed on the second floor. At the end of each turn, players take turns moving a staircase or a trapdoor, and regardless of where they move on their respective tables, they still connect to the same trapdoor on the other table. And since the scenario takes place in a house, having furniture and other indoor items to decorate your tables is recommended. And despite the rumors of the manor being haunted, no special monster figures are needed to play this scenario. And it has rules about placing 3 treasure tokens per player, so this overrides the rules about treasure placement found in the 2nd edition book. The requirement of 2 full-size tables for this scenario can be a deal breaker for some players. Also, the extra setup this creates, the increase in total area for figures to maneuver around, and the fact that figures can only leave from the lower floor, and the stairs can get moved when you're about to climb on them, can potentially lead to a very long game. So be sure to set aside plenty of gaming time if you're going to play what should turn out to be a very memorable game of Frostgrave. The second scenario, Brycho's Celestium, takes the wizards inside a building containing a machine that once charted the movements and alignments of heavenly bodies. The magic seal within the machine was damaged during the freezing and thawing of Felstad, and has released some strange starfire elementals. These creatures are described as semi-sentient balls of blue-white flame. They hover, so suffer no movement or climbing penalties. They can see through terrain, have an immunity to a few spells, and pack a whopping +7 fight modifier. However, they vanish after dealing damage, and they're easy to kill with just 6 armor and 1 health if you have a way to deliver magical damage. The setup for this scenario requires you to build the Celestium. Exact measurements are given, but it's essentially a 3-tiered circular step pyramid, and each of the tiers needs to be able to rotate independently from the other tiers. You also need 5 pillars to be represented on the table, and at the end of each turn, the 3 tiers of the Celestium rotate, each at different speeds, and a starfire elemental shows up next to one of the 5 pillars. The scenario instructs players to place 6 regular treasure tokens, plus a special treasure at the top of the Celestium that contains just the scroll to summon a Starfire Elemental. So this overrides the 2nd edition's ruling about treasure placement. I haven't read through all of the Frostgrave scenarios that have been created, but the construction of the Celestium is probably the most complex required terrain piece that I've seen. While you could easily use a stack of 3 different sized books or something else of different sizes, to make something that has 3 levels and also looks like some sort of astronomical device could be quite the challenge. Meaning this scenario might not be for everyone. But for those that tackle the Celestium, I think a battle against the extremely deadly Starfire Elementals on the spinning terrain piece, with the excitement of trying to grab 7 treasures, will create a fun, high-risk, high-reward situation. The 3rd scenario is the Arena Without Walls. This is an ancient gladiatorial arena that's described as a sphere that happens to be flat. The setup is done basically as normal, and it's the only scenario in the supplement to use the 2nd edition treasure placement rules. To represent the weirdness of the arena, any figure attempting to leave the board must roll a d20, and on anything less than a 15, they instead show up on the opposite table edge and can't try to leave the board again that round. And no figures can attempt to leave the board on the first turn, which prevents them from immediately appearing in the opposing deployment zone. Also, figures are not able to draw a line of sight through the table edges, so it's almost more like there's an invisible teleportation wall than the battlefield actually being a sphere. Any random monsters that end up showing up during the battle will be Foulhorns. These monsters were once used in the arena's gladiatorial battles, and the creatures have now thawed and are wandering the wall-less battlefield. They're fast, well-armored, and deal extra damage with their horns. The scenario also calls for including some special rules found in the Into the Breeding Pit supplement regarding traps and how to place randomly encountered monsters. If you don't have this additional book, you can skip this part of the special rules and still have an enjoyable experience. Something interesting about using the Into the Breeding Pit's rules on random encounters is that while it makes monsters more likely to appear than they did with the 1st edition rules, they're now less likely to appear than they are with the 2nd edition rules. So you'll actually be more likely to encounter the Foulhorns if you don't use the rules from that supplement. I think this could be a fun scenario, but it might have too much randomness. The uncertainty of whether you'll be able to escape with your treasure or just show up on the other side of the board is a neat concept, but I think it would have the tendency to drag on, as it's technically possible that figures would never roll high enough to actually leave the board. It's also interesting that you can use the edges to potentially teleport your figures to the opposite edge on purpose. However, you aren't allowed to intentionally fail the roll to escape, so if you attempt this, just remember there's a 30% chance that your figure will inadvertently leave the battlefield. The Arcane Locations supplement does have one new spell, and that's Shape Starfire Elemental. This spell summons one of these gaseous monsters under your spellcaster's control. However, the spell can never be learned. It can just be cast from the single Scroll of Shape Starfire Elemental, which can be found during the Brycho's Celestium scenario. And this scroll is the only new treasure that can be found in this supplement. There's no new treasure table to roll on. One major addition it does come with, though, are 10 new base resources. However, my thoughts about these are kind of mixed. 4 of them provide boosts to specific spells, 2 of which are for spells found in other supplements. 1 boosts the Restore Life spell, which doesn't exist in 2nd edition, and Miraculous Cure, and the other boosts the Absorb Knowledge spell, which I've found to be a less useful spell in the 2nd edition. And the weapon rack has lost all of its worth of storing basic weapons, because these can now be purchased for free. But the Enchanted Clock could be worth it to give a little extra experience points to a wizard that has a Chronomancer spell that gets cast every battle. And the Recovery Room is a good purchase for any wizard with an apothecary in their warband, as it allows them to temporarily fill a hole left in their team by a badly wounded soldier. This can really pay off over the course of a campaign, as it prevents some of the firing and rehiring that often takes place when this survival result is rolled. There's also a few resources that help reduce some costs or provide additional money for selling things, but these can be hard to justify because you'd have to make use of their benefits many times before you'd make back just the money you spent to purchase them. My overall opinion about the Arcane Location supplement is also kind of mixed. While the 3 scenarios included are all very interesting and are sure to create some memorable experiences, they will also require more time than most scenarios. The large playing area of 2 tables, combined with the moving stairs in the Walenton Manor, means it can take a really long time to move around. The arena without walls has a similar possibility if your figures continue failing their escape rolls. And Brycho Celestium requires constructing the Celestium, which could create a lot of prep work to build this specific structure. And finding the Scroll of Shaped Starfire elemental, while it's kind of cool, is just a one-use item. I'm glad to see the new base resources, however, some of them have been made obsolete with the release of the 2nd edition, and most affect just specific spells, but can be useful if you're using one of those spells. The recovery room, however, is something worth adding to any wizard's base to prevent the usual desire to just fire badly wounded soldiers instead of giving them a game to recover. So I wouldn't recommend this supplement to everybody, but if you get it as part of the Frostgrave Folio book, it's worth looking into some of the base resources, and having access to the more involved scenarios in the supplement can give more gaming options if you've got the time for some longer battles. So if you decide you want to check out the Arcane Location supplement, I'd recommend heading to your friendly local game shop or favorite online retailer to pick up a copy of the Frostgrave Folio book for yourself. If you're enjoying this content, feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss a video. I'm Alan with Bricks and Blocks Gaming. Thank you for watching and play well.